Harris said the defendant's actions show the difference in being vigilant and being a vigilante. Defense attorney Amy Lee Copeland said the shooting of Arbery was only based on self-defense. With no decision today, the jury will continue deliberating tomorrow morning. Gernal Scott, Fox News.
Defense attorneys in a federal trial of 3 officers charged with violating George Floyd's civil rights rested their cases Monday, paving the way for closing arguments. Former President Trump's new social media venture, Truth Social, beginning its soft launch on Monday, marking the former president's return to social media after he was banned from several social platforms last year. Michigan basketball coach Juwan Howard has been suspended for the final 5 games of the regular season and is fined $40,000 for hitting a Wisconsin assistant coach in the head, triggering a post-game melee. I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Happy day. This is Clara Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. And it's just as true now as the first time I said it. Let's see what we've got here at Zemi Ikutni. We start out with the Daily News, who says, our view, support the creation of Chamorro Registry for SBA program. The Native Pacific Islanders of America Equity Act is a good idea and should benefit the island by helping businesses owned by Chamorros. The bill, sponsored in Congress by Delegate Mike San Nicolas, calls for the governor of Guam to create a database to verify Chamorro ancestry. Yeah. It would amend the Organic Act to establish the registry and include Chamorro-owned businesses and a small business administration program that provides preferential access to federal contracts. Two of my favorite subjects, identity politics and rent-seeking, all in one fell swoop. It's swell swoop.
It's like a bingo card.
Yeah. The bill does not list a funding source for the registry, which Governor Lujan Guerrero said would cost between $1.5 million and $2 million annually, but it's worth it.
How much annually?
$1.5 million or $2 million.
Just to give that money away.
Yeah. St. Nicholas explained that attaching federal funding to the bill would slow down the approval process. Now, I've read about this before. In fact, it was an explanation made by one of Madeline Berdalio's staffers for the reason that we had to pay war claims out of our Section 30 money. And that is that there's a provision in the House of Representatives called scoring. And if a bill contains no appropriation, there's no scoring. But if it contains $1 worth of appropriation, it has to go through this process called scoring, which makes its passage much less likely. The Madeline Berdalio staffer said that's why Madeline used the Section 30 funds, because had she included an appropriation in her bill, it couldn't have possibly passed. Parenthesis before the election, close parenthesis. Anyhow, Michael says, let's not do that. On Friday, after local officials testified before the Committee on Natural Resources / Office of Insular Affairs, members of the Guam legislature expressed support for funding the registry's creation and maintenance. Because the registry could benefit the island through this and other programs, legislative funding is a good idea. Yeah, $2 million here, $2 million there. Let's increase the annuity for, let's increase the COLA for retirees. Let's spend $150 million on giving money to people who weren't even born during World War II. What the heck? It's only money. Because the registry would, but even if it were only used to support the SBA program, it would be a good idea. Matthew Thomas Schoonover, an attorney who testified at the hearing, said the SBA program is limited to businesses that are at least 51% owned and controlled by individuals that have been subjected to social and economic disadvantage. Little social engineering here.
So you got to be a negative or ready to go join this program?
Yeah. People,
wow.
People who have been subjected to social and economic disadvantage. But we could call in Robert Underwood as an expert here. You know, he's been teaching critical race theory since 1972, and he would tell you that Chamorros are the oppressed under that theory.
That's just so condescending to begin with.
Isn't it?
Incredibly condescending.
Yeah. The soft bigotry of low expectations. But you see, it's not today, not people who have been subjected to social and economic disadvantage today. I mean, it's going way back.
Can you still be a native Pacific Islander of America and not have been subjected to social economic disadvantage and apply?
I don't think so. I think it follows under the, the traditional application of identity politics. And Robert would tell you critical race theory, that the mere fact that a person was a Chamorro subjected to the subjective race, systemic racism practiced by the United States, that's all it takes. And that's what this stuff is all about.
Now I get why we can't get ourselves out of anything.
Yeah, so Matthew Schoonover says businesses that are at least 51% owned and controlled by individuals that have been subjected to social and economic disadvantage to right wrongs that have hampered the ability of certain individuals or groups to fully participate in the American economy. In her testimony, Leon Guerrero noted that Guam businesses have not been treated the same as other businesses applying this SBA pandemic relief. Only 27% of Guam businesses applied for restaurant relief funds qualified and received assistance. Could it be because no, that couldn't possibly be because they didn't meet the qualifications of the program. It had to be because of systemic racism, which is the answer to everything. Here's a quote from the governor. Our decline in population and significant loss in tourism arrivals, in addition to the inequity under federal programs, will adversely affect our ability to generate substantial economic growth if additional opportunities are not created, especially at this pivotal time for economic recovery. Guam businesses need help, and this program will help them. It's not Guam businesses, Chamorro businesses.
And by the way, we're still in a sole authority health emergency.
Yeah, that's not the advantage at all. Yeah. And of course, that's all of it, if there is a disadvantage. All right, the Post ran an article, Proposed Native Chamorro Registry Gains Support. The legislature on Friday adopted a resolution supporting the Native Pacific Islanders of America Equity Act. Guam delegate Michael San Nicolas introduced the legislation co-sponsored by Northern Marianas delegate Gregorio Sablan. Resolution 260-36 passed Friday with 13 votes. Vice Speaker Tina Rose Munya Barnes and Senator Talina Nelson were absent and excused. Also known as H.R. 6504, the Native Pacific Islanders of America Equity Act would allow eligible Native Chamorro and Native Northern Marianas organizations to qualify for federal contracting opportunities through their participation in certain small business programs that are administered by the Small Business Administration according to Resolution 260. H.R. 6405 would establish a Chamorro Registry program under the Office of Governor, which will keep a database to serve as a genealogy bank to verify native Chamorro ancestry requirements, the resolution stated. Yeah, that's clearly worth $2 million a year to keep track of who is and who is not Chamorro, Jose. Native Chamorro in H.R. 6504 means an individual who can document that one or more of the individual's direct ancestors resided on Guam before August 1, 1950. No residency or blood quantum amount shall be required for an individual to qualify as a native Chamorro under paragraph 1 of this bill, the resolution stated. Now, I put this on the card, but I took it off to talk it in this space. I put it on the card as the registry versus Chamorros because there's no blood quantum involved here.
That would be a mess if they did.
Yeah.
Because it has to include the Native Americans in the United States in the benefit. But that's another story.
It is indeed. Yeah. So if it's all you had to do was to trace your ancestors back to someone who lived here before 1950, then my friend Randy Cunliffe will be eligible for this. He was born on Guam in 1948. Yeah. So I guess it'll be good for, he'll probably really support it. I'm sure that he fits into this social and economic disadvantage. After all, he's a lawyer.
Oh, that's what the law says.
Yeah. And then I wonder if Shoichi Yokoi's ancestors would qualify under this, because they were here before he was here before 1950.
But he never had a mayor's verification.
Yeah, that's true. And then I told the story once before about my cousin, my distant cousin, Paul Klitzkie, a member of the Wisconsin National Guard, who was called to active duty in September of 1940 when Roosevelt federalized the Guard. and was shipped out of San Francisco in November of 1941 for Manila, stopping in Honolulu and Guam on the way. Now, he wasn't here very long, and he was in the Navy, he was in the Army, so maybe that wouldn't count. But, well, I'll file my papers anyhow and see how it goes, right? A Native Chamorro organization under H.R. 6404 is any organization that is a Guam nonprofit organization that is controlled by Native Chamorros as defined in Section 4 of the Organic Act and whose business activities will principally benefit Native Chamorros. Non-profit, that's got to be, well, it's the legislature's resolution. So maybe this is an accurate report of what the resolution says. I should have looked at the resolution before the program, but it doesn't make sense. A Native Northern Mariana organization follows a similar structure. The federal program, as your proposal, would also amend the Small Business Act to include Native Chamorro and Native Northern Marianas organizations as eligible disadvantaged groups under the 8A Business Development Program, which is designed to assist minority-owned businesses to compete in the wider-owned economy. So this is kind of like that women's preference bill the legislature passed. They get a break on government contracts. You know, like a 5% break on government contracts.
This is confusing. So Native Chamorro are not Chamorro. They're just defined by living on Guam, residents of Guam.
Yeah.
And then Chamorro in the Marianas are not included. This doesn't make sense at all. It's Native Northern Marianas as opposed to Native Chamorro.
Yeah, so you would have to trace your ancestry back to someone who was living on Saipan, probably like 1984.
Yeah, because this is interesting. This has nothing to do with race.
If that's what it means, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. This is okay.
But you know, we tried the same thing with our plebiscite law, and the Ninth Circuit said the way you set it up, it's just a proxy for race.
I know I'm getting lots of people who identify as Chamorro angry at me right now for saying this, but this is the kind of stuff that makes me look at myself and go, what am I trying to say who I am?
Yeah.
Right? Number one, it's Pacific Islanders of America.
Mm-hmm.
How many people are going to register for that?
Yeah.
That are separatists.
Yeah, that would be enough right there. Yeah. Okay. According to Resolution 260, H.R. 6504 would benefit eligible Native Chamorro-owned businesses who compete for federal contracts by providing training, technical assistance, and contracting opportunities. Prior to session Friday, the House Committee on National Resources, Office of Insular Affairs, held a hearing on H.R. 6504. And then there's the same quote from the governor. Guam's population has significantly declined over the last 10 years. Results for the 2020 census reflect an overall 3.5% decrease in the number of local residents, with the disruption in our local tourism industry caused by COVID-19 and my inept handling of it, the governor said, beep, beep. We look forward to new business opportunities. Yeah.
Okay, now I think I get something here, Bob.
Mm-hmm.
CNMI has it right. Native Northern Marianas. We should be called Native Guamanians.
Should. But see, in Northern Marianas, you don't have to be a native of the Northern Marianas. You could be a native descended from natives of Chuk, of Truk.
It's about residency then.
Yeah. For example, of the 297 Guam businesses that applied for funding through the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, only 27% qualified and received funds. Unlike our state counterparts who have diverse markets to supplement their economies, our food establishments are a large segment of our island's tourism industry, Guam's primary industry. Guam is in a unique situation because our recovery is tied to international travel, which continues to be negatively affected by the Wuhan virus pandemic. Therefore, we'll give some of the businesses on the island breaks when it comes to federal contracting. There's some symmetry here. The governor later stated in her testimony that her administration is prepared to carry out the provisions of 6505, requiring the establishment of a genealogy database under her office. But she also requested an appropriation to establish and maintain the registry. Given the shortfalls caused by the Wuhan virus pandemic, we must ensure that our government will have the means to carry out the bill's provisions effectively. Additionally, we request that an amendment be added to require rules and regulations on how the office of the governor will work with SBA to provide information necessary for the determination of whether an organization is a native Chamorro organization. She estimated $1.5 million to $2 million would be needed to establish and maintain the registry. Okay, well, I have several comments on this. Starting out with this, it's interesting how the statute is worded because, you know, the word Chamorro is the key word here. But according to what I've read here, you don't have to be Chamorro in order to be on the Chamorro registry. You had to be able to trace your ancestry back to someone who resided here before 1950, right? But let's assume that what is intended there is actually a proxy for race, because most of the people who resided here before 1950 were, in fact, Chamorros, right? So this would be, it'd be interesting to see how Michael Bavacqua comments on this, because as far as I know, this is the first recognition in a federal statute of group rights here on the island. Now, the American concept of law, our Constitution, everything about the country, you know, it started out abhorring group rights. It was about the individual, freedom, etc., and you didn't get special privileges because you belonged to one group or another. Now, it got perverted, you know, because of slavery, but we made some Herculean efforts to get it back on track. But it seems like there's this suction to try to pull us back into the group rights arena. So I'll correct myself. It's not the first time. It's the second time, because I've read this before. Section 9A of the Organic Act, as enacted, said the governor shall accept as provided in this act or the laws of Guam, appoint by and with the advice and consent of the legislature all heads of executive agencies and instrumentalities in making appointments and promotions. In making appointments and promotions, preference shall be given to qualified persons of Guamanian ancestry. 1950. With a view towards ensuring the fullest participation by Guamanians in the government of Guam, opportunities for higher education and in-service training shall be provided to qualified persons of Guamanian ancestry. So that was the first recognition, but it came out of the Organic Act in 1968. But it looks like we're trying really hard to get something like that back into the Organic Act, you know, that we have two classes of residents here, Chamorros and everybody else. I can't say that I am very enthusiastic about this idea, because I start out with kind of an old-fashioned idea, and that is that the Constitution, the laws, society should be colorblind. We treat every person the same regardless of what he looks like, where he's from, etc. A Constitution is blind, colorblind. And that, of course, is what Justice Harlan said in his dissent in Plessy versus Ferguson, which might very well have become the law were it not for Brown versus Board of Education, which I will say right now is one of the worst decisions the Supreme Court ever made. Here I am being an iconoclast again. I don't have time to go into it today, but I'll work it up and present someday that the reason that I think that Brown versus Board of Education is not to be celebrated. It's to be endured. There was also an article in the Daily News on the Chamorro Registry. The registry would be federally approved and codified in the Organic Act if passed. It could be used for more than just the SBA program, said Mike San Nicolas. Okay, let's take a short break and we'll come back to Mike San Nicolas on the registry.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Subway keeps the Eat Fresh Refresh subs rolling in with the fresh take on timeless classics. Try the honey mustard rotisserie style chicken. It's the new Subway rotisserie style chicken with a flavor upgrade, mizzled with honey mustard on hearty multigrain bread and topped with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Craving some heat? The Baja Turkey Avocado hits all the hot notes. Oven roasted turkey stacked high on hearty multigrain speared with smashed avocado and drizzled with the pecan chipotle sauce. Tuck into new subs to savor at Subway. Eat fresh.
Do you have a car? Do you want to get rid of it? Yeah, yes. Yes, there are people. Absolutely. How did you know? Here's the deal. Take your used car to the guys over at Nissan Guam, and they're going to take a look at it. And if they love it, and they probably will because you take care of things, you could get all kinds of money on this, cash for your car. Used car values are higher than ever before. They'll take all makes and models. Doesn't need to be a Nissan or an Infiniti. They'll give you a super fast appraisal, and you say, shoot, sign the papers. Now, you can use that as down payment on a brand new Nissan if you like, or maybe you need a used car. Maybe you're sitting around going, well, I guess somebody's going to come in, they're moving to Guam and whatever, and they're going to need a ride. So let's go to Nissan Guam and check out the great sale they've got. The Nissan Ninja sale is going on. So all those used cars that people are taking in, well, they refurb them, change out the oil and the belts and all of the things that need to get taken care of, and turn them practically into brand new automobiles and give you some incredible savings, up to $14,000 on the used car inventory. Go and take a look at it. NissanGuam.com.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
Okay, so we're still talking about the Chamorro Registry, picking up with the article from the Daily News. But the registry, which would be federally approved and codified in the Organic Act if passed, could be used for more than just the SBA program, said Delegate Mike San Nicolas, one of the sponsors of the Equity Act. Examples are identifying Chamorros for eligibility in other federal programs and eligibility for a native political status plebiscite. Now, notwithstanding, here's a ball that you could hit over the net, or you could just catch it and hang on to it. According to what we know here, it's trace your ancestry back to someone who lived here before 1950. No blood quantum required, etc. But Michael San Nicolas thinks we could use it for eligibility for Chamorros for the native political status plebiscite. And I suppose you could, because the number of non-Chamorros living here before 1950 was relatively small. a small price to pay to let to allow a little impurity into the electorate. But I'm kind of surprised that St. Nicholas would say this, because he's gone on record before saying that if we do vote on political status, everybody should get to vote. Now, apparently, he's reversing himself. Local senators on Friday voted to approve Senator Therese Tlahi's Resolution 260 supporting the Equity Act, with a provision from Senator Chris Duenas that the governor could request funding to create and operate the registry if needed. There were no objections. The governor, at a congressional committee hearing for the Equity Act on Friday, requested federal funding. Duenas said asking Congress for money could potentially slow adoption of the Equity Act. Quote, in the face of the billion-dollar budget that this legislature will be entertaining in August, Madam Chair, with all due respect, I believe this should be our duty, he said of the registry. This is our Chris Duenas? Is this Resolution 11, Chris Duenas? Bill 11?
How many senators supported the extending war reparations to everybody? I think all of them.
I think so, yeah. Yeah. Because we're so tight on money. The office of the governor would be responsible for the registry, and Leon Guerrero said it would require an independent office and staff to manage. I can't think of a better way to spend our money. And, of course, if it's in the office of the governor, these will be unclassified employees, so she will get to hand-pick them, of course.
You know where they'll work, though.
Say again?
You know where the office is located at.
Of course. Yeah. To be registered as a Chamorro under the Equity Act, a person would have to provide birth certificates to demonstrate that one or more of a person's direct ancestors resided on Guam before August 1, 1950. The public auditor would be required to audit the registry every 3 years. The most recent attempt by Gov Guam to track native Chamorros for the purposes of a plebiscite was the Decolonization Registry. It was started by the Election Commission in 2002, but shut down in 2017 after the federal court struck down the law authorizing the plebiscite for being illegally race-based. Residents were slow to sign up, and the registry had just 13,000 people listed by the time it shut down, PDN files show. Shows you it was a really burning issue. Yeah.
What was the number that they were trying to get to?
70%.
Just didn't happen.
No. Of course, we don't know what the numerator of the denominator of that fraction was, but 70% of it, no matter what. All right. Next item on the card. Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism. Once again, when you see something like this, go with the narrative. This is red rice, it's not orange rice, unless you want to be canceled or find yourself criticized by the Pacific Daily News. I think everybody pretty much understands that by now. Well, let me go through the card. So that's the first item on the card. The second item on the card is GVB again. And then more about the creditors versus the archdiocese, rent seekers versus the people. And this rent seeking, again, ties back into this Chamorro registry angle. Underwood versus Canada. And Robert Underwood versus the territory, and more Weir and Underwood versus our community. Usual stuff. Okay, so we've gone through systemic racism, and I go through the paper every day seeing if any government agencies have complied with Public Law 36-34. You'll recall that public law changed the law effective at the beginning of July last year, saying that the 2 notices of public meetings that every board or commission must publish in the newspaper has to contain the agenda for that meeting, with the agenda items set out in such a manner as to put the public on notice as to what is to be discussed. If that public law is not complied with, any action taken at the meeting announced by that notice is void. So the bill has got gigantic teeth. And boy, some government agencies have been so low to figure out that the law actually applies to them. The worst possible offender is the Guam Visitors Bureau. And here's the Visitors Bureau today. The Visitors Bureau Board of Directors will meet on February 24. And here's the agenda. Item 1, call to order. They didn't screw that up. Item 2, roll call. They didn't screw that up. Item 3, minutes of previous meeting. Approval of the minutes of the previous Board of Directors meeting dated February 10. Approval of minutes of the special Board of Directors meeting dated February 18. Item 4, Chairman's report. Chairman's report on what? The weather? The state of the parking lot at the Visitors Bureau?
The chair?
The chair? That's enough right there. And we go on. We've got management's report, which is done well. Then we get down to item number 7, old business. Old business like the contract that was held over from the... No description of old business at all. Visitors Bureau, you can't do that. You can't just put old business in your agenda. Even worse is item number 8, new business. Open topics invited. So under new business, we'll talk about anything that you want to talk about and take action on it, of course.
Open mic night.
Yeah. And then there's announcements and adjournment. What's it going to take, you guys? I guess I know what it'll take. One of these days, one of your contracts is going to come bouncing back to you because you'll be challenged for not complying with this law.
Instead of spending money on a color ad, spend some time going over the law.
Or hire somebody who knows how to put an agenda together. Good idea, Jose. Now, this Public Law 36-37-6 is a wonderful thing. It's right up there with the Open Government Law, which it is part of course, and the Sunshine Law, because it really, if you follow, you can really tell what's going on in your government. As an example, in the PDN, there was an article, an ad, the Department of Administration War Claims Adjudication Committee meeting, public notice, March 1. Now, that's that committee that's was created by a couple of local statutes to rule. It was created to adjudicate claims of people that would have been granted, who could have received money under the federal statute but were late filers. So that's the reason it was created. And here's their agenda. Roll call. 2, reading of public notice dates for meeting. 3, new business. Announcement of committee members. B, election of chairman. C, review of public laws 36-62 and 36-73. D, review of required application forms. E, discuss committee responsibilities. 1, publication of notice of deadline for filing claim. 2, determination of eligibility. Item 4, Roman numeral 4, general discussion, announcements, and propose next meeting date. 5, adjournment. So it's their first meeting and they got it right. The Visitors Bureau has been meeting since 1492 and they still can't get it right. So I'll tell you what, over there at the Visitors Bureau, get close enough to the stove so that you are burned. And ask Director Byrne how to put together your agendas. Now, some of the most interesting stuff in the paper is these announcements. Next, I found this one in today's paper, in today's Daily News. Contractors License Board notice. Special board meeting, March 1. It's going to be at 10 a.m. at their conference room. Number 1, call to order. Item 2, roll call. Item 3, 3A, February 3, 2022, resignation of Cecil Buddy Orsini as Executive Director of the Contractors Licensing Board. Proposed action to accept Mr. Orsini's resignation and accept Ms. Linda Ibanez as temporary acting executive director. B, authority of the executive director. Here's a good one. Proposed action to rescind any findings and decisions issued by Mr. Orsini that has not been formally approved by the board. Wow.
That's a soft admission.
Well, and it's a real business-like approach to the job. You know, compare and contrast the Chamorro Land Trust. You know, when they found something was out of order, we're going to talk to all the land. Well, we're going to go in. We'll deal with this later. And then 3 meetings down the line, we completely address that. It's over. So it's encouraging to see people on this board who are willing to jump in and tackle the problems. Now, item 4, announcements. Schedule regular board meeting for March 9. So good job, Contractors Licensing Board. I have a feeling that they're going to be businesslike and impartial and not operate on the, if you'll pardon the expression, buddy system. Yeah, now you'd think that Rory would finally have caught on how to do it. Nope. They're going to have a meeting on February 24, and one of the items on the agenda is item 4, old business. And he's got some heavy-duty stuff on here, all of which go into the toilet because they didn't properly announce their business. Didn't announce their meeting. Commission on Decolonization is going to be meeting on, let's see here,
February 29.
Yeah. This is interesting. I just noticed. Zoom link below. The meeting will also be live streamed via COD's Facebook. There's a meeting ID, a passcode, a detailed meeting agenda, etc. For more information for individuals requiring, etc., please contact Melvin Wanpat. And there's no date for the meeting. That's amazing. And he's got call to order, approval of minutes, financial report, new business, unincorporated reprint. I wonder what unincorporated reprint is about. Opinion editorial, old business, Mellon/ACLA Scholar Project, DOI TAP grant projects, self-governance study and publication, plebiscite update, UN updates, UNPO meeting, U.S. Special Rapporteur response, office update, task force, open floor, adjournment. But I think that possibly the fact that they didn't include the date for the meeting might mean that all of those actions are void.
Which ad are you looking at, in the Post or the PDN? The Post has a meeting date. It's Tuesday, March 1st.
Where do you see it in the ad?
Very, very top of the ad.
Well, maybe it's the way I did my screen captures that I missed it. It could be. Well, interesting. My bad if that's the case. Let's go on to the next item on the card, which is creditors versus the archdiocese, but we'll take a short break first.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
All right, next item on the card here is more of creditors versus the archdiocese. There's an interesting article here. And by the way, if you're interested in following it, go to Jungle Watch. The URL for Jungle Watch is junglewatch.info. Frenchie, who is the proprietor of Jungle Watch, is doing a really good job of reporting on what's going on in court.
It's been daily.
It has. And kind of putting other people on the spot, isn't he? You see what a real reporter kind of looks like. Okay, so here's the article that ran in the Post. It starts out kind of quizzically, 2 sides, but 1 goal. That's how District Court of Guam Chief Judge Francis Tydenko Gatewood on Monday described the difficult situation the Archdiocese of Hagåtña and the survivors of sexual assault find themselves in as both parties identify sources of assets to compensate more than 290 abuse claimants. The judge said she believes both parties have the same goal of compensating the many victims of clergy abuse. Quote, it comes down to what the Archdiocese is capable of paying without losing the entire community. That's really the bottom line, the judge said on the second day of the trial that would determine whether the assets of Catholic parishes and schools could be used to pay clergy sex abuse survivors. Now let me go back and read that sentence again. It comes down to what the Archdiocese is capable of paying without losing their entire community. That's really the bottom line. This is Judge Gatewood saying this. So that is the best news coming out of this fracas since it began, that she sees it as something that perhaps she is bound to see that that the Archdiocese is not bled dry so that it dies from loss of blood, but that money is paid out to the claimants, but the church and some of its institutions, anyhow, will be allowed to survive. The judge said on the second day of the trial it would determine whether assets of Catholic parishes and schools could be used to pay clergy sex abuse survivors. However, no amount can ever restore the survivors' lives or innocence, even if there's $500 million available, the judge said. The Archdiocese of Hagåtña's latest plan to get out of bankruptcy involves a proposal of up to $34 million for abuse survivors' compensation. The Committee of Creditors, representing mainly abuse survivors, however, is proposing payouts to be at a minimum of $100 million from insurance firms and real property assets, including the assets of parishes and schools. The judge shared her thoughts about the case after Archdiocese Attorney Keith Talbot suggested witnesses' testimony should not be cut off just by sharing their beliefs based on canon law or the law of the Catholic Church. Interesting. Attorney Edwin Caldy, representing the official committee of unsecured creditors, objected to the suggestion, saying it would entangle the court in canon law. Now, this is really an interesting point of law. And of course, the starting point is here at the very beginning of the Bill of Rights. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. And I've explained the concept of establishment of religion. And in order to understand that concept, establishment of religion, you have to understand that you have to know the definition of what used to be the longest word in the English language, anti-disestablishmentarianism. Yeah.
It used to be.
Yeah, until supercalifragilisticexpialidocious came along.
That's something quite atrocious.
Yes, it is. Yeah, and this is where it goes. You know that England started out, the United Kingdom started out as Catholic until Henry VIII decided he wanted to dump his wife and marry somebody else. He could not, the Catholic Church would not allow divorce. It was prohibited, etc., really prohibited, not just a matter of discretion like down at the port in Rory. So Henry VIII's solution was he divorced England, the United Kingdom, from the Catholic Church, started his own church called the Church of England, and dumped Anne Boleyn. We call the Church of England the Episcopal Church in the United States, which has drifted quite a ways from its Catholic roots, to say the least. So during the time that Henry VIII was doing this, there were establishmentarianisms. They wanted the Church of England to be the established religion of England. Disestablishmentarianism said, no, maybe it was that way with the Catholics, but we've got to disestablish now. And then the group that was contrary to that was the anti-disestablishmentarianists. Nice word. So if you understand, that's what the phrase established religion meant. It meant a state religion. You couldn't make people pay taxes to support a church, etc. That's basically what it came down to. And of course, the Bill of Rights only applied to the national government. So many, if not most, of the states in the beginning had established religions. Massachusetts had an established religion until 1820, before they finally changed it. Now, the Supreme Court, as it does with so many things, has taken the phrase from the Constitution that I just read. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. And they have stretched that so far. They've enlarged its meaning so much to the point of saying that you just really, the government really has to stay away from religion. You can't say prayers in school, and on and on and on. Now, the pendulum has been swinging back this way. As an example, in our Organic Act, we have what's called a Blaine Amendment. I don't think I have it with me. Maybe I do. Let me just take a quick look here. Yeah, it's under, it was original Section 5P, No public money or property shall ever be appropriated, supplied, donated, or used directly or indirectly for the use, benefit, or support of any sect, church, denomination, sectarian institution, or association, etc. So-called Blaine Amendment. Let's break for the big halftime show, and we'll come back to the Blaine Amendment.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Putin gives the order. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News, telling his troops to keep the peace in two disputed regions in eastern Ukraine. Linda Thomas Greenfield, the United States ambassador, telling a meeting of the UN Security Council that's nonsense. Britain's Prime Minister Boris Johnson.
This is plainly in breach of international law. It's a violation, a flagrant violation of the sovereignty and integrity of Ukraine.
President Biden has spoken with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky.
The White House said Mr. Biden reaffirmed the U.S.'s commitment to Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity. He condemned Russia's decision to recognize the independence of those two Moscow-backed breakaway regions of Ukraine, and he noted that the U.S. would, quote, respond swiftly and decisively, along with its allies, should Russia step up its aggression.
President Biden has issued an executive order banning any U.S. investment, trade, or financing with the disputed regions. The White House says sanctions are coming Tuesday. The U.S. has withdrawn the last of its diplomats from Ukraine, housing them temporarily in Poland. Canada will continue its crackdown on the truckers who took part in a 3-week protest, which police broke up over the weekend, and anyone who supported it. Parliament extending the emergency powers requested by Prime Minister Trudeau and considering making financial sanctions permanent. A shocking story from suburban Salt Lake City, Utah, where police say a man told his 4-year-old to shoot at police officers after a dispute at McDonald's.
Police in Midvale say the unidentified man flashed the gun at the pickup window Monday, demanding his order be corrected. The cops were called, and as they were taking the man into custody, a witness says the 4-year-old was told to shoot the gun. And the boy did, but an officer was able to swipe at the gun as it was fired, directing the bullet away.
Fox's Tom Rigotti. America is listening to Fox News.
$15 might not get you that far, but Chili's is bucking the trend with $15 meal deals. At Chili's, $15 gives you not one, not two, but 3-course meal deals complete with a drink, a starter, and an entree. Mix and match 3-course meals 15 ways to Sunday with soup, salad, or chips and salsa to start, and ranchero chicken tacos, honey chipotle crispers with rice, bacon ranch quesadillas, or personal fajitas for the main course. Build your own $15 meal deal at Chili's. More life and great value happen here.
Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Police in Colorado say 5 people found dead in an apartment Sunday, overdosed on fentanyl.
Police responded to a call about an unconscious person at an apartment in Commerce City, northeast of Denver. They found 3 women and 2 men dead inside. Another adult and a 4-month-old baby were found alive. The 17th Judicial District Attorney, Brian Mason, said they likely believed they were ingesting cocaine, not realizing it was laced with fentanyl. The police chief said the baby is fine, but he believes the parents are among those who died. The CDC reported overdose deaths rose 30% for the year ending in April of 2021, topping topping 100,000 deaths as health officials warn of a rise in fentanyl-related deaths. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
The federal hate crimes trial of 3 men who chased and killed Ahmaud Arbery in Brunswick, Georgia, now in the hands of the jury, which deliberated about 3 hours Monday before recessing. All 3 defendants were already convicted of murder months ago. After testimony from the last of the defendants, the defense rested its case Monday in the federal trial of 3 former Minneapolis police officers charged with violating George Floyd's civil rights by not stopping fellow officer Derek Chauvin's fatal restraint. Longer than expected negotiations Monday in the baseball lockout.
Officials for Major League Baseball and the MLB Players Association met for 5 hours Monday in their return to the negotiating table for a new collective bargaining agreement. While there were breakout sessions for both sides during that time frame, Monday began what's anticipated to be a busy week of talks at Roger Dean Stadium in Florida to end the lockout before a February 28th deadline, as to not impact opening day for the majors on March 31st. MLB did offer to increase the player arbitration bonus pool from $5 to $20 million, still a gap from what the players union is seeking. There was also no discussion regarding the competitive balance tax, one of the core economic issues that's at the heart of the nearly 3-month-long work stoppage. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. The services that you choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
There we are again, back on Tall Tales. I left off talking about the Blaine Amendment, which is very common in state constitutions. It goes back to a guy who ran for president once upon a time, James G. Blaine, also known as Blaine from Maine, who attempted to amend the U.S. Constitution to put language in similar to what we have in our Organic Act. The Supreme Court a couple years ago struck down a state Blaine amendment by saying that if you're going to provide certain kinds of pavement for playgrounds, you can't limit that to state benefit to schools that are not religious. If you give it to one, you got to give it to all. And here in Guam, of course, ever since, we've been providing secular textbooks to religious schools and bus transportation to kids who go to religious schools, which, as far as I understand, passes muster under the United States, under the Free Exercise Clause, and I mean the First Amendment, perhaps not under the Blaine Amendment, but it was never challenged, so probably okay. But this question about getting into the provisions of canon law in a civil trial dealing with liability, that's a sticky one. I don't quite know how that's going to come out. I wish the newspaper would have reported on how the judge ruled on that particular objection, because on the one hand, you know, separation of church and state and that old saw, and if civil courts start interpreting canon law, it tends to be an infringement on the Free Exercise Clause. If it tends to give too much weight to canon law, it tends to be an infringement on the Establishment Clause. So I could see why Edwin Caldy, the lawyer for the Creditors Committee, objected to it, and I could see why Keith Talbot, the lawyer for the church, wanted to get it in. Going on with this article, Archbishop Michael Burns, who took the witness stand Monday, acknowledged the Archdiocese stand that he, as Archbishop, only holds the assets of schools and parishes in trust for the benefit of schools and parishes. Now, I wonder if Archbishop Burns knew that on the first day that he took over as Archbishop, or this was part of his trial preparation. One never knows. Caldy said because the bishop himself described the Catholic Church on Guam as one body, he therefore administers the church for the benefit of the whole archdiocese. Hundreds of pages of documents were marked and admitted as evidence, including the archdiocese's original and amended articles of incorporation and Burns' statements about the filing of the archdiocese bankruptcy in January 2019. At the time, Burns asked parishes, schools, and other entities under the archdiocese to comply with financial restrictions during Chapter 11 bankruptcy. Now, that was a tough one for him, you know, because when you declare bankruptcy, certain restrictions apply. An interesting part of bankruptcy is this: there is something called the voidable preference in bankruptcy law, and that is that any payment that the bankrupt made before declaring bankruptcy within the 4 months nearest to filing of the bankruptcy can be clawed back by the bankruptcy trustee. And if you stop to think about it, this makes a certain amount of sense. If you're a shrewd businessman and you're thinking, man, I'm on the edge of insolvency, I'm going to go bankrupt here within the next couple of months, what can I do? Well, let's see, I'll give my brother-in-law a fat contract and I'll pay him in advance, and I'll hire my cousin, and I'll pay him a gigantic salary, 10 times more than what he's worth, so I can do something with that money before it all has to go into the bankruptcy estate. Those would be called voidable preferences, and the trustee in bankruptcy could claw them back. He could bring suit against my brother-in-law and against my cousin and recover those payments made as voidable preferences. So when the archdiocese declared bankruptcy, of course, the bishop had to say, hey, guys, Chapter 11, here's your list of do's and don'ts. But, of course, by doing that, in a sense, he's stopped from denying that he runs the finances of the churches and schools. If he, on the other hand, had said, you pay no attention to this bankruptcy, it's got nothing to do with you, He might have found himself hauled into bankruptcy court. That put him in a tough position.
I'm recalling your experience with the land over there at the hotel, and same thing there, where then Archbishop Apron had made himself a what's the word called? He was the one in charge.
Yeah, well, what he did was the Axion Hotel property was property of the Archdiocese. He set up a separate corporation, something like the Redemptus Mater Seminary, Inc., or something like that. Set it up, appointed his cronies to the board, created a super board of 4, the 2 Generinis and 2 other folks from New Jersey.
All off island.
Yeah, who had veto power over important decisions. Set that up, and then as corporation sole and the title holder to the property, conveyed that real property to the corporation that he had set up.
Separate from the Archdiocese.
Absolutely. And when Mr. Generini was here on island, he was on Patty's show, and I called.
I remember that.
Yeah, I called Patty, and I questioned him. Well, why did you do that? And he said, to protect it from lawsuits. So, did he have a crystal ball? Did he know what was coming down the pike?
Maybe they do things differently in Italy.
Maybe. And then, of course, had that stuck, had the Redemptus Mater Seminary or the Axion property still have been a separate corporation, you could make the argument that that wouldn't have been part of the bankruptcy estate. Although Archbishop Apron argued day and night, no, I still control it. It's still ours. Look, there's a certificate of title that says that it belongs to the Archdiocese. Pay no attention to those people in the back room there with the whiteout. Yeah. All right. Next was Richard Unterland. Former Archdiocese Finance Council President Richard Unterland also took the stand, testified on the Finance Council's work in 2016 to 2018 in identifying so-called essential and non-essential assets of the whole Archdiocese, including parishes and schools that could be used to settle the claims of survivors of clergy sexual assault. Unterland, a real estate developer who holds a law degree, said there was a lot of pushback from the parishes and schools at the time until Burns asked everyone for their help. He also corroborated earlier witness testimony of the financial difficulties of the Archdiocese, its schools and parishes faced at the time the council was tasked to assess the Archdiocese assets and debts. So in addition to the other things he brought to the job, Archbishop Apron really put the church in financial straits. Yeah, he just spread a little sunshine everywhere he went, didn't he? Unterland said there was lots of planning, scrutiny, and prayers that went on. At the time, he said there was some confusion about some of the properties they thought were owned by the Archdiocese, but that were later found out to be owned by other entities, such as the Sisters of Mercy and the Catholic Social Service. Leo Tudela, the chairman of the Creditors Committee representing survivors of clergy assault, was also present in court Monday, along with committee co-counsel Andrew Glasnovich. The judge also heard from 3 other witnesses who are parishioners from Gigo, Toto, and Chalanpago, including Francis Guerrero, Maria Titano, and Joseph I. Cruz. Archdiocese Attorney Jerry Diaz. I've never heard of an attorney named Jerry Diaz.
I don't think any relation to me.
No. Some other kind of Diaz, okay? Archdiocese Attorney Diaz asked them about their individual parish operations and finances, as well as the local culture and traditions of families donating properties for use as parishes and schools. Caldy asked the parishioner witnesses whether they would ask the archdiocese or the archbishop to give them back their donations to their parish in the event that their parish building closes or is merged with another parish. No was a consistent answer from the parishioners. The creditors committee argued earlier that at the time of the donations of properties were made, there was no intent to create a resulting trust that the archdiocese is now using to shield school and parish assets. I gotta say, I agree. You know, 99 out of 100 people wouldn't know a resulting trust from an elephant or a giraffe. It's just not something that comes to people's minds rapidly. All right, so very interesting. Another day in court today, which we'll, of course, follow for you tomorrow, and I'll be boning up on what happened by reading Jungle Watch, junglewatch.info on the net.
You know, at the risk of revealing that I myself am Catholic and a part of this archdiocese, I read somewhere, I'm not going to say the person's name, though, because there was a comment made that, you know, the church has been hiding this stuff and has been abusing people and been trying to cover it up. The same people that are in the stand are the ones who expose this. And that's very important to note as well.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yeah. Very important.
It wasn't the media.
It was not the media. Yeah. Absolutely not. Okay, next item on the card, rent seekers versus the people. And before I go into that, let me tell you what rent seeking is. It's a very useful term, rent seeking. Rent seeking and rent seekers. It's got nothing to do with the money you give to your landlord every month. And it's just another one of those where you know the meaning of each of the two words, put them together, and they mean something altogether different.
So I can go to him and go, you're just a rent seeker.
You can't tell your landlord.
Bob told me.
Well, you could tell him that, yeah. And you could use my name if you want to.
Okay.
But you have to warn him it's not really a pejorative. Here's a definition of rent seeking. Rent seeking is a concept in economics that states that an individual or an entity seeks to increase their own wealth without creating any benefits or wealth to the society. Rent-seeking activities aim to obtain financial gains and benefits through the manipulation of the distribution of economic resources. Thus, this whole Chamorro the registry thing, an exercise in rent-seeking. The Women's Chamber lobbying for that 5% set-off on GovGuam contractors, that means they are rent seekers. The Guam Women's Chamber of Commerce and Rent Seekers Association. So that's what rent seeking is. Bill would use $150 million to pay every World War II survivor and descendants. This ran in the Daily News. Paying a claim to every single descendant of Guam's World War II survivors will cost an estimated $150 million, and a bill pending at the Guam legislature intends to fund that cost. Now, these descendants, the people always get mixed up in the terminology here, using words like survivors and descendants, etc. As I understand it, there were people who were alive on July 20th, 1944. I know one of them really, really well. It's my wife, yeah. They were alive then. And those people who were alive then were eligible for the federal war claims that passed into law in 2017, so long as they were alive on the day that that law was enacted. Anyone who was alive on the day before Liberation Day who died before the effective date of the federal law was not entitled to anything. The only heirs of people who went through the occupation are the heirs of people who were killed during the occupation. So if your grandfather was killed during the Japanese occupation, then you would be entitled under the Federal Act. If your grandfather was born on the day before Liberation Day and died in 2010, you're not entitled to anything. So what this comes down to, in short, is this. This bill that we're going to be talking about here puts money in the pocket of people who weren't even alive during World War II. Imagine their suffering. Oh, wait a minute, they weren't even alive.
Well, inherently, they're suffering something.
Yeah, inherited suffering, yeah. Paying a claim to every single descendant of Guam's World War II survivors will cost an estimated $150 million, and a bill pending at the legislature intends to fund that cost. Payments were distributed to war survivors under the federal Guam World War II Loyalty Recognition Act, launched in 2016. So it's 2016, not 2017. If an eligible person died after the enactment date, their descendants could file a claim. But the descendants of people who died before 2016 enactment date were left out of the program. Those who missed the 2018 filing deadline will be eligible for claims under a locally funded program set up to launch this year. But the criteria is the same as the federal program. And that's the announcement of the agenda of the meeting of that commission that I read at the beginning of the show. Bill 220, introduced by Senator Amanda Shelton, would pay every claimant regardless of the date of death. According to Shelton at a Thursday hearing for the bill, previous federal estimates put the cost at $180 million, and Guam already has paid out $30 million over previous years. It's not ideal that we're going to pay these amounts from our government coffers. But this is a path forward that we have because there are still families, there are still survivors who are seeking this type of resolution. No, there are no survivors.
They're seeking recollection.
Yeah. Now, of course, one of the saving aspects of this whole thing is Shelton is a sponsor. So when it comes time to vote on it, she may not know whether she likes it or not. She may not know whether to vote for it or not. Yeah, so a huge misstatement right there. You're not paying survivors. You're putting money in the pockets of people who weren't even alive during World War II. The bill would use $75 million from Section 30 funds. That's the money that we get, the federal income tax by service people that's covered back into our treasury. So, okay, well, it's Section 30, so it comes from the Fed, so it's okay, right? Well, if we didn't pour it down this rat hole, what would we be doing with it? Schools and hospitals and on and on and on and on. In other words, that $75 million won't benefit me in the slightest. I'm selfish. I look at these things. I have a self-interest. And I would tell you that my self-interest is probably just about the same as everybody else's. The other $75 million will come from a tax credit program in which business taxes would pay for the claims in exchange for an annual break of their taxes. So the way that works, businesses apply, and if they're accepted, instead of paying their gross receipts into the Treasury, they pay their gross receipts into this fund. Same thing, right? The money is not spent for the general welfare.
Redistribution.
It's redistribution of wealth. In total, the plan would cost the government $30 million each fiscal year. Now, what else could we do with $30 million each year? We've got so much. What's $30 million here or there, right? For comparison, the War Claims Program set to launch this year has $10 million in funding. Bill 220 will have to go to another hearing as only one member of the public testified in support of the measure Thursday. Lawmakers were concerned that members of the administration, including RevTax, BBMR, were not present to talk about the potential impact. They were invited, according to Senator Joe San Augustine. The administration submitted a fiscal note. This is basically what the bill says, that this will take $30 million away from the general fund. Speaker Therese Tetlahi said, "Oh, it's only $30 million? What about taking the gross receipts back? If we got all this money, taking the GRT back to 4%.
It's back on the table.
Section 30 is a remittance that's used to take care of operations of our government to provide services to our people," Senator Chris Dueñas said. And Brown comes along. Senator Joanne Brown, vocal opponent of using local funds to pay claims, stated, "I find this reprehensible. I find this incredibly distasteful to ask our people to pay our own money as victims of a war. It's morally wrong. The use of a tax credit program will still amount to locals paying for the claim," Brown said. "My colleagues, when we ventured down these roads and tell our people we're doing something for them, we're not telling them the truth about what we're taking away from them." And that, of course, is exactly right. She put it a different way here in the other article. Yeah, in the other article, Ronald LaGuardia was the only person to appear and testify on the bill. But Senator Shelton said written testimonies from families of war survivors have been submitted. So somehow, let's unpack this here. Somehow, yeah, let's go to Chicago for the seventh inning stretch, Wrigley Field.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Do you have a car? Do you want to get rid of it? Yeah, yes. Yes, there are people. How did you know? Here's the deal. Take your used car to the guys over at Nissan Guam, and they're going to take a look at it. And if they love it, and they probably will because you take care of things, you could get all kinds of money on this, cash for your car. Used car values are higher than ever before. They'll take all makes and models. Doesn't need to be a Nissan or an Infiniti. They'll give you a super fast appraisal, and you say, shoot, sign the papers. Now, you can use that as down payment on a brand new Nissan if you like, or maybe you need a used car. Maybe you're sitting around going, well, I guess somebody's going to come in, they're moving to Guam and whatever, and they're going to need a ride. So let's go to Nissan Guam and check out the great sale they've got. The Nissan Ninja sale is going on. So all those used cars that people are taking in, well, they refurb them, change out the oil and the belts and all of the things that need to get taken care of, and turn them practically into brand new automobiles and give you some incredible savings, up to $14,000 on the used car inventory. Go and take a look at it. NissanGuam.com.
Here we are back at Tall Tales, Wrigley Field, the seventh inning stretch. That means just 2 more innings of Tall Tales for today. And I was dealing with rent seekers versus the people. Amanda Shelton's bill that's going to cost us $150 million to put money in the pockets of people who weren't even alive during World War II.
Probably don't know when World War II happened.
Yeah, today's test. Which came first, World War I or World War II? I can't remember.
Vietnam.
Yeah. So $150 million coming from the taxpayers. So what that means is that everybody who pays taxes on Guam, and everybody on Guam pays taxes because we all pay the GRT. Even if you don't pay any income tax, when you buy something, in effect, you're paying a 5% GRT. So everybody is going to have to pay to put money in the pockets of people who weren't alive during World War II, because these people had descendants who were alive during the Japanese occupation. And according to Amanda Shelton, we have to do this to kind of, what did she say, make people whole? Yeah. We have to do this because there are still families, there are still survivors who are seeking this type of resolution. No doubt.
Oh.
Yeah. Because the families still want it, so we got to do it, right? So that means then that if you can trace your ancestry back to someone who was alive during World War II, before Liberation Day, and who died before the effective date of the Loyalty Act in 2016, you would get some of this money. That's all you got to do, is just be able to prove you were one of the descendants of that person. You could be the great-grandson of one of those people, and take a lot of comfort from the fact that the people of Guam are ponying up $150 million to put this in your pocket. Now, does this, let's assume that the people who were alive during World War II suffered. Does paying money to their offspring or their offspring's offspring or their offspring, does this ameliorate the suffering of people who are dead? No. It's just an elaborate scheme for wealth redistribution and as a means of politically pandering to a relatively large group of people at no cost whatsoever to Senator Shelton. That's what it comes down to, because she's thinking, well, no one will criticize me because this is about Chamorro War survivors, so it's got to be okay. No, it's not okay. And any one of these people that's eligible, people who can trace their lineage back, are not the rent seekers. Shelton is the rent seeker here, Vote for me because I really understand economic rent. I really understand wealth redistribution. And I will use my office to take money from some of the people to give to other people. And if you vote for me, maybe you'll be one of that, tell me who you are. Like she says here, some of the families are still asking for it, right? Then I'll see if I can take care of you. Horrible legislation. Terrible legislation. But as I said earlier, we don't know how she'll vote on it once it comes to the floor, because she doesn't know how she'll vote on it once it
Remember,
comes.
this all started out as a clerical error.
Yeah, that's right. A clerical error. And then Senator Therese Tetlahi's amendment, floor amendment, that Joe San Augustine ruled non-germane. Therefore, it wasn't even discussed on the floor.
Well, that's okay. He doesn't discuss anything with anybody anyways.
Oh, he just hollers at him. So, yeah, I'm glad you reminded me. So then, when the bill was engrossed, the floor amendment that never even saw the light of day was added to the bill, And, of course, when it came time to vote for once, Shelton was very decisive. When it came time for the vote and her name was called, she said, aye. She didn't say pass. And the speaker signed it. The legislative secretary attested it was sent to the governor, and the governor signed it into law. And then somebody said, oh, shucks, boy, did we screw up. And then when it came time to fix it, there was a cadre who said, no, we should just leave it like it is, which, of course, didn't make a whole lot of sense. It didn't happen. And now Shelton has come along. It's only $150 million to pay these the heirs of survivors who died before 2016. Great legislation. And let's see. I've got CW on the line. C.W. Moss. Do you remember C.W. Moss?
Barely. It was a commercial, right?
Bonnie and Clyde.
Oh, okay.
Bonnie and Clyde was the kid that hung out with Bonnie and Clyde. C.W. Moss. Good afternoon, C.W.
Hey, I've been listening about the reparations for survivors of descendants of previous survivors. Under this bill, does that mean that George Tweed's daughter could apply for this as well?
Well, I hypothesized Shoichi Yokoi, who wasn't an American citizen, but of course Tweed was an American citizen. And I think it'd be hard to deny that he wasn't living here before 1950. Good point. Good point.
I just thought that might raise some eyebrows there and upset some of the folks that like pushing the legislation around here.
Yeah, good call, CW. CW, when I hear the letters CW, I think of someone sitting at a telegraph key.
Once upon a time.
Continuous wave. There was voice radio and CW, continuous wave. But that's not you, is it?
Once upon a time I did that, but not anymore.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I was a radioman in the Navy.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks a lot for contributing, CW.
All right, thank you.
Interesting point. George Tweed's heirs. It's only fair as long as we're handing out money, right? Oh, wait a minute. I forgot. Michael Bavacqua is starting that crowdfunding drive to raise enough money to build a statue of George Tweed down in the Skinner Plaza. So once the statue is built, we can come along and tear it down in the name of equity and critical race theory. Robert Underwood will be right out there, the first guy to start pulling that statue down in the name of critical race theory, right? All right, moving on to the next item on the card. We're going national here for a while. This is Jeffrey Sachs versus parents and critical race theory. And once again, we have expertise here on the island when it comes to critical race theory. And this is an article by Liam Gibson. Did I read this article already, Jose?
I think so.
Yeah, I did. Okay. Let me go on past that then to China and the DPRK versus Guam and the U.S. Missile radar system in Hawaii on hold as Pentagon rethinks threat landscape. Fort Shafter, Hawaii. The Pentagon is continuing to delay development of Hawaii-based missile defense radar. This came out at Stars and Stripes, by the way, as it considers changes to the threat landscape in the Pacific, despite a mandate from Congress that it be built and operated by 2028. That's the missile defense in Hawaii. The 2022 National Defense Authorization Act, passed late last year, included $75 million for the radar, which would be capable of identifying and classifying specific missile threats. The National Defense Authorization Act calls for the director of the Missile Defense Agency to certify its program includes adequate amounts of estimated funding to develop, construct, test, and integrate into the missile defense system the discrimination radar for Homeland Defense planned to be located in Hawaii. The Defense Department in 2020 dropped plans to build a $1 billion tracking system in Hawaii and a second location in the Pacific that had not been determined. Tie a string around that one. The Missile Defense Agency had spent the prior 2 years studying 3 missile sites on Oahu and another at the Pacific Missiles Range facility at Barking Sands on Kauai's west coast. Oahu residents had pushed back on the proposed sites over concerns about culturally sensitive areas and overdevelopment. That would be the Hawaii branch of Protehe Latexan. The defense of Hawaii remains top priority for the Department of Defense, Pentagon spokesman Christopher Sherwood wrote in a statement to Stars and Stripes. The threat landscape, however, has changed significantly since the early planning stages of the Homeland Defense Radar, or HDR. In light of these changes, the department is taking a broader look at the defense of Hawaii and assessing options to address the evolved threat. This analysis will inform the department's investments for defense of Hawaii and future budget cycles. The Defense Department's top priority in missile defense in the Pacific is now, drum roll, Guam. Let me reread that sentence. The Defense Department's top priority in the missile defense in the Pacific is now Guam. So we aced out Hawaii. Let's head for Churchill Downs and see what their missile defense looks like there.
Hafa I'm the owner of Guam's largest tourist attraction group. The pandemic's been very tough for all of us, and particularly for my team members. So I'm really appreciative and grateful for the PUA assistance to our team members, and more recently, the SVOG federal grant that allowed us to reopen these facilities and re-employ everyone at a critical time when PUA ended. From myself and my team, on behalf of all of us, thank you for the federal funds that allowed us to reopen.
The federal fund you provide saved many, many jobs. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We employ about 35 technicians for our shows. Thank you for the federal funds that kept us going.
Thank you for helping with the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for helping to save our jobs.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Okay, so I've got an article here that ran in Stars and Stripes that said, we're not going to spend all that money in Hawaii that we thought we were because we've changed our priorities. And I ended up with this sentence: the Defense Department's top priority in missile defense in the Pacific is now Guam, said Ricky Ellison, founder and CEO of the Missile Defense Advocacy Alliance, a nonpartisan organization that supports defense systems. The threat is not on Hawaii like it's on Guam right now, he said during a phone interview Tuesday. North Korea conducted a spate of missile tests last month after a lengthy hiatus of such provocations, and China is far along in the development of hypersonic ballistic missiles. The North Korea tests have been short-range, medium range at best. The ranges tested in January could shoot as far as Guam, but not as far as Hawaii. Meanwhile, in the emerging competition between China and the United States, Guam would play an outsized role in any military conflict between the two superpowers. The small U.S. territory is roughly 2,000 miles west of Hawaii and much farther west than that, 3,800 miles, and much closer to the hot zone of the South China Sea. It hosts bases for the U.S. Air Force and Navy, with a major Marine Corps base now under construction. The White House's proposed budget for the next fiscal year, anticipated to be released within the next month, is expected to lay out a 5-year funding plan for the missile defense architecture for Guam. It's going to have multiple radars, multiple shooters, and may displace a possible a new Guam hospital. For 2 months last fall, the Army tested Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system on Guam to see how well it could integrate with existing defenses. Whatever kind of missile defense system Guam ends up with, it would play an important role in also defending Hawaii from attack, Ellison said. Still, Hawaii's congressional delegation has not given up the quest for the Homeland Defense Radar Hawaii for protecting key military sites in the state, such as the headquarters for the U.S. Indo-Pacific Command, U.S. Pacific Fleet, and U.S. Army Pacific. Hawaii Defense Radar, Homeland Defense Radar Hawaii is needed to protect these defense assets, plus some 1.4 million Americans living in Hawaii, to include some 100,000 military and affiliated personnel and their families. Representative Ed Case of Hawaii said in an email statement Tuesday. Now, that guy's a case if there ever was one. Case sits on the House Appropriations Committee and was instrumental in including the $75 million in funding after the White House budget had excluded it earlier. He said he would continue to provide the funding necessary for the Defense Department to fully comply with the mandate to complete the Hawaii radar by 2028. So, there will be two, I predict, Great Karnak, I predict there will be two opposing viewpoints on this. One viewpoint will be, hey, that's great. The U.S. is really going to protect us from those Chinese and Korean missiles. It's a dangerous world. Thank God for the U.S. being our protector. The other viewpoint will be, see, I told you, we're just a target. And the more stuff they put in here, the more dangerous it becomes for us. If we didn't have the military here, we'd be safe as a bug in a rug. And you could pretty much bet which one of who will be singing which song when this all comes down. I expect coverage in Bavakwa's column, if he's aware of this, maybe not. But I see it as really good news because from what I've read, there are comprehensive systems that can take down ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, hypersonic, you name it. But and Guam is probably the ideal place to provide such protection. Imagine trying to provide missile protection for Texas. What a job that would be. So with a relatively small amount of hardware, I think we could bring a lot of protection to our island. And then, of course, you got to look at the economic benefits. If we bring this, if we bring this system to Guam, be a lot of construction money poured into it, and there will be a lot of really good jobs that arise from having that system here. So I see this as really good news for us, bad news for Hawaii. But, of course, Hawaii has got 2 senators and 2 members of the House of Representatives, so they will try to do probably whatever they can to get the missiles in their backyard instead of ours. I had another article here that deals with the military that I thought I might read into the record if I had time, which I do. And it's ran in Breitbart a few days ago, and it's titled DOD. The military spent 6 million man-hours on woke training under Biden. 6 million hours. The United States military spent 6 million man-hours on an extremism stand-down and diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is abbreviated DEI, something else to watch out for. Oh, I'm CRT, I'm for DEI all the way, Underwood said. Since President Joe Biden took office, according to Department of Defense data, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, General Mark Milley, provided the data to the Senate Armed Services Committee Republicans in response to an October 2021 request. The data showed that service members spent 5,889,082 man-hours on the stand-down. A day when all the commanders in the military spoke to their troops about extremism and DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, including critical race theory. Hold it down, Robert. I know you think that's good news. Robert has been teaching critical race theory since 1972. We face real threats across the world, yet the Biden administration is more focused on promoting its leftist social agenda in the military instead of countering China, Russia, and Iran, or creating an effective anti-counterterrorism plan, said the Republican senators in a statement on Tuesday. And of course, they're right. But on the other hand, you know, I was just saying the other day, boy, when the Chinese and the North Koreans find out what we're doing with DEI, which means diversity, equity, and inclusion, they're probably going to want to pound their swords into plowshares. They're going to say, up against a country that's got that in place, how could we possibly hope to win? Quote, our military is not an extremist organization, and our service members, by and large, all good people, are dedicated, faithful patriots, the senator said, as were the Republicans said. We are alarmed that so much training time and taxpayers' money was devoted to a partisan political agenda instead of recruiting, training, and equipping the lethal force we need to defend our country. The Republicans who requested the information for DOD include Senator Jim Inhofe of Oklahoma, Marsha Blackburn, Tennessee, Roger Wicker, Mississippi, Deb Fisher, Nebraska, Tom Cotton, Arkansas, Mike Round, South Dakota, Joni Ernst, Iowa, Tom Tillis, North Carolina, Dan Sullivan, Alaska, Kevin Kramer, North Dakota, Rick Scott, Florida, and Tommy Tuberville of Alabama. A guy with a name like Tommy Tuberville couldn't get elected anywhere in the country but Alabama. For every, the senators noted that the Biden administration's Countering Extremism Work Group in December released a report that found that fewer than 100 service members had engaged in extremist activity after spending roughly a year studying it. 100 guys. For every documented case of extremism in the military, our military spent a whopping 58,000 hours in training on extremism. The senator said, adding that while any case of extremist behavior is wrong and harmful to military readiness, previous defense authorization bills have already equipped the military to handle those cases. Milley's response also showed the DOD spent more than 1,000 hours on a climate adaptation plan. Well, remember how it works. It's not the truth. It's not the colors of the letters. It's what the word says. A good way to wrap up the show talking about Joe Biden, causing me to wind up by saying, "Let's go, Brandon."
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Underway or imminent. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The movement of Russian troops into two disputed separatist regions in eastern Ukraine on orders from President Putin to act as peacekeepers. A pretext for war, according to U.S. UN Ambassador Linda Thomas-Greenfield, telling a Monday night meeting of the UN Security Council.
We can, will, and must stand united in our calls for Russia to withdraw its forces, return to the diplomatic table, and work toward peace.
The White House plans to announce formal sanctions later today. President Biden has already issued an executive order banning any American investment in or financing for the disputed regions. Ukraine's president defiant in the face of an invasion.
Here in Ukraine, President Zelensky addressed his nation at 2 a.m. local time.
We won't give away anything to anyone. We are confident in this. It is not February 2014, but February 2022.
February 2014, a reference to the Russian invasion of Crimea 8 years ago Sunday. Later that year, 58 nations abstained from condemning Russia at the United Nations. Many thought they were afraid.
Fox's Lucas Tomlinson in Lviv, Ukraine, from where the remaining American diplomats in the country have been evacuated to Poland. Invasion worries pushing early morning Dow futures sharply lower, trading more than 500 points lower at this hour. Asian markets down as well. Canada's parliament voting Monday to extend the emergency powers used to crush a 3-week truckers' protest in Ottawa, which includes freezing the bank accounts of people who supported it. New Mexico Republican Representative Yvette Harrell introducing a bill in Congress to offer those people asylum in the U.S.
Let's protect them from their heavy-handed government. This is ridiculous to see their bank accounts being frozen, their assets being frozen. It makes no sense, but let's provide temporary asylum until their government will stop using this Emergencies Act.
America is listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News